If you're a teacher looking for a detailed video on how to lesson plan, then this video is for you.
That's exactly what I've been looking for.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back the curtain of how I lesson plan to show you exactly what I do in my class to give a better insight of what goes through my head and how I think and how I process things and how I put it all down. And even more importantly, I'm going to go into details, show you exactly what I do every single day so you see it from beginning to end, the entire process. And so with that said, since the video is about group work lesson planning, let's start with the very first thing. Roles for students. And now you see, the word is this, that the word I want you to keep in mind is accountability. I had a teacher ask me, how do I keep students engaged? And I thought about it. I said, the easy answer would be to, make your lessons exciting, this and that. And that's part of it. But the truth is, in all of this, especially when it comes to groups, the secret is accountability. And you know how it is. If students are in groups, there's more chance of things not going like they should, falling off the rails, students be more disruptive, distracted, less focused. And so how you get them all in line to be focused on a singular thing is the accountability. And with that, it starts with the roles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the PowerPoint that I show my students as far as how the roles go. So that way you have a better idea how in my class what roles I assign to the students. So let me show you on my computer what it looks like. So what I'm showing you is the PowerPoint that I show my students. Now I actually print all this out. It's on a nice little piece of paper, and next to it I have the students basically write down their names so they can assign their roles to each of the person in the group. In fact, if you want to, down in the description below, I'll put a link for that. So if you want the printout of how I actually have in my class as far as the students sign up for the roles, you can do that. Just click on a link and I'll get that out to you. And also another part of it is this video is part 3 of an overall series, and I actually take you through the process of how I started group work with my students about 3 weeks ago. So if you want to see that, just go down below. I'll have the links for that as well. But the first thing we're going to start with is the leader. So let's go take a look at the screen here. The leader. Now the leader, there's 5 different roles we have, and the job of the leader is to mainly keep things going. Their job is responsible for things. So as you I won't read it verbatim, but you kind of see, I put a description of what the leader is supposed to be. But then also what I found helpful is putting down the skills: responsible, dependable, able to make decisions. So I want one student in the group that I can go back to if I need to ask questions or find out where the group is at. So that's our first role. Now the second role, this is probably the one, and it says it right here. This is the one that is the most active, and that is the messenger. So the messenger, their role is to get things, to put away backpacks. We have the backpacks in the front of my class. This is entire school-wide. Students will put the backpacks in the front of the room or somewhere in the room besides right by them. So the job of the messenger, we put away backpacks, and then at the end of the day to get the backpacks. We have Chromebooks. Their job is to get the Chromebooks and put away the Chromebooks. So there's a lot of things, and so it tells you the description of what they do, but this one is important. It's the skills: responsible and not tempted by walking around the room, and have a good memory. Smart. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along, but that's the description I have and the skills for the messenger. Now the third role I have is writer. Their job is, once we start doing group work, their job is to basically document things. So they're in charge of the slides, if they have to create slides, if you have a PowerPoint if it is, if they're writing something. So they're the ones that basically document. So it says know how to use Google Documents, slides, and form, good handwriting, and a fast typer. The fourth one I have is speaker. Now, the thing of this is, I actually told my students that we wouldn't have much presentation because a lot of them really hesitant about doing group work at this presentation. But if there ever comes to the time of the presentation, that is going to be the speaker. And so it tells you right there, able to speak in front of a class, time to tell what the description is. And then the fifth role, now here's the thing, some of my groups only have 4, some only have 5, and some may only have 3, depending upon if students are there or not. And so the fifth one I have is data analyst. And so there may be some students that aren't the data analysts in your group, or maybe in speaker is only 3. And so the catch-all I have to that is that the leader, if there's someone is not there for the day, it's a leader's job to take that role. And so data analysts, their idea is to be able to calculate grades, add and divide accurately, and so forth. So, and part of the accountability, and this actually leads us right into our next thing, which is lessons. Lessons, here's what you got to keep in mind. Is whatever lesson you have, you have to have a good portion of it being accountable to the student. So let me kind of break this down for you. Let's say you are doing a project, and it's a 3-day project with the students. What you don't want to do is just have one grade connected with the end product of that project. Because what you're going to find out is if there's not accountability along the way, that students aren't going to do things. There'll be a lot more messing around. And then the very last day, the very last moment, they have to turn something in that's not much of quality. You need to have the accountability built in to your lessons. So accountability built in lessons. So when I really break down, you'll see this here shortly, when I really break down what my lessons are, you're going to see a lot of accountability in it. That students are going to be responsible for a certain part of that grade, and they're going to be responsible for their contribution to the group. So that is the key when it comes to lessons, is to make sure you really put in that accountability. The beauty of my lesson planning is called the plug and play system. Let me tell you what that is first of all, actually. Okay, so the plug and play system is this. If you ever find yourself just having to recreate the wheel every single lesson, and every unit, you're just feeling overwhelmed, like what am I going to teach? What am I going to do every single lesson? The beauty of a plug and play system is you have set lessons that you do over and over and over again, but what changes is the information. So how you do the lesson and the expectation lessons and everything else going along with it stays the same, but what changes is the material that goes in it. Now, the reason why this works so well is because you don't have to recreate the wheel. Once you teach the kids once how to do a lesson, you don't have to reteach them every single time. In fact, I spend probably just like beginning of the year, and I'll spend right now, I'll spend probably about a week going over the different kind of plug and play lessons that they're going to have. I want to make sure they have it down. That way, when I carry it out the rest of the years, there's no question. They can just, it's second nature to them. Right? So that you want to make sure it makes it easier for the students, and it makes it definitely easier for you. And then once you have certain plug and play lessons, then you just go to your calendar and you plug them in based upon the material, and then you fill in the blank with other activities or other enrichment or other things that you like to have. So let me show you my plug and play systems that I am introducing to my class for the group work. So let's go back to the computer here so we can see. First one I have is reading, notes, tests, and give students an essential question. So what's going to happen is this. Students are going to come into the class, and we start a little routine, but once we get going, they're going to have about 10 minutes, 12 minutes to actually read out of the book. That is it. Read out of the book. Take notes and read out of the book. Then they're going to have about 10 to 12 minutes to share with their group, study with their group, share their answers, speculate guess, create questions, and everything else. Just prepare for the quiz. And then here's the accountability part of it. They are then at the end of that going to take a quiz on what they just learned. So 10, 12 minutes of learning by themselves, 10, 12 minutes learning as a group, and then they take the quiz. Now the quiz, here's the thing, this is where the accountability comes in. Because if I just told the students, go ahead and study together, I guarantee more than not, they would mess around. But this is what I tell them. I tell them your grade is going to be a combination of how you do as well as the lowest person in your group. So that gives them the incentive to help out everybody in the group. Now, part of this is they chose to own a group, so I warned them ahead of schedule. Just be wise who you choose as your partner, right? And all that. But that's part of it. So that accountability, knowing the fact that their group is tied with, their score is tied with the group and vice versa, they push them to just do a little bit better than they would otherwise. So that is the key of the accountability, and then that is one I plug and play. And so, for example, coming up is Andrew Jackson. And so I'll have about Andrew Jackson, we'll talk about, I teach 8th grade history, Indian Removal Act. And so they're going to read out the book about the Indian Removal Act, be prepared, and then take the quiz. And then another one will be about the nullification crisis. Andrew Jackson, nullification crisis. Same thing. They'll come and read about that. Same exact lesson, just different material. That is the beauty of the plug and play system. And what you want to find is you want to find about 3 to 4 of these plug and play lessons. That'll be enough to cover whatever you need to cover. So that's one of the things. Another one we have is vocabulary, reading, annotation, test. That is pretty much the same as the top one. It's just that instead of reading out of the book, I will give them an article to read. All right. So here's another one, mind maps. And so what my students are going to do is they are going to create a mind map. And I won't go into details exactly what that is. But once they get the information, the material, and so forth, they'll actually create a mind map regarding that. So once I cover maybe like 3 things in a particular unit, they'll create a mind map about that. So that'll be another activity that we'll go back to time and time again. Next one here, I have down timeline, cause, and effect. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how I'm going to implement this in the class just yet, but I want to put some sort of timeline where students can see a continuation of what's going on as well as the cause and effects of different events. Then I have this one here, writing lore of America. So what I want students to do is, this is the part where they get a little creative. This is once they already have the information, they already learned this stuff, they already applied it. Now they're going to create something new. And I want them to create a story, an analogy where America is the character in the story. Now I'm going to tell you, I know already that this is going to be a stretch, because this is next level. This is symbolism, analogy, taking what they know, creativity. So if my students are able to pull this off, I'm going to be extremely excited. I'm not expecting too much from them at first, but hopefully by the end of the year, they'll definitely get it down. But that's another plug and play I want to do, another lesson. And the last one I have down here is matching and categorizing game. This is where I give them maybe 3 different columns. Each column has to do something specific about a certain unit. So, for example, once Andrew Jackson, maybe I have a column all about facts about nullification crisis, then one about the Indian Removal Act, and then another one about Jacksonian democracy. And then there's a matching part of it. So those are some things that I'm going to go back to time and time again. That is the plug-and-play system. And then from there, what you do is you sprinkle in other activities. I'm going to show you what that looks like here shortly when I actually take out my calendar, my map, and show you what it looks like. But that is the plug-and-play system. All right. So what I do first of all is I, of course, cross out my Sundays, cross that out, cross out my Saturdays. And please forgive my writing. I have a horrible, I'm a lefty here, okay? And so what we're going to do is, actually I'm going to start on the 17th of March. 17th of March is when I start. So this is going to be a beginning. And a unit for me usually goes 3 weeks. So I'm going to just write down 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So that's usually what we're looking at. Now, some things I want to make sure you put down first of all are just at least know is if you have any minimum days. And so for me, the Fridays for us are minimum days. So I'm going to just put down MD just so I have a clear understanding. That way I know how much time I have. For us, a normal class, I think, is like 50 minutes, and a minimum day, they're like 40 minutes. So there's a difference. So you just want to make sure you have that plan. Also, another thing interesting is on the 4th, I'm going to put down NP for no NBP, no backpacks, just so I know that as well, because I want to make sure that's a day where students maybe are just on their Chromebooks of something of that sort. And so then, what else is there? The 18th, fire drill. I want to make sure I have that on fire drill, because I got to make accommodations for that. So those are some things. So now that I have my 3 weeks planned out, I got my 3 weeks there. I know my fire drills. I know minimum days, and the little things I need to know. Then I could start putting my plug-and-play system into play. So Mondays, now that's one thing I didn't mention, but Mondays for my school, we have dedicated as a school to give students time to work on iReady. It's a program students can use for math as well as ELA. And so that's basically means I have to give up one of my days for history for ELA, which is definitely okay because overall that benefits them. So I'm going to just put down iReady here, iReady here, and then iReady here. So that gives me, what's that, 4 days in each week, so that's 12 days left. Now I know the last day I want to do a test. Now one thing I do is with my students, they have an individual, once we give them some information, I mentioned this in the video here, once I give them some information, they'll have a quiz that same day. But then I still want them to have a big test overall. And this test actually is what I'm going to use to compare data how students do in groups versus my previous years when they were not in groups. And so that test is going to be right here. So that's where we're at so far. So now what I have left with, I have like 11 days to work with. So let's see how well this plays out, because I like to, the flow would be get the information, use the information, create something with the information, kind of taking through that learning process. And so I have 3 sets of notes that I want students to do. The first one is going to be on Jacksonian democracy. So I got fire drill here, right? And then right here we got notes on, we'll call it JD, Jacksonian democracy. The next day after that, if they have the notes and all that good stuff, probably won't be enough information for matching. But what we'll probably do a thinking map. All right, let's call it TM for now, a thinking map on the notes about Jacksonian democracy. And then the following after that would be a writing, going back to our idea of creating the analogy to writing. All right, so that's the flow right there. So let's continue that flow and see how it looks. So the next set of notes will be right here. And that'll be notes on, see, after Jacksonian democracy, the next thing would be Indian Removal Act. And then we have, once again, a thinking map and then writing. And then the other thing we have after that would be notes again. These notes would probably be, say, Jacksonian nullification crisis, NC. And then from there we go to the thinking map and writing. And then this day right here, we could introduce, this actually worked really good, or really works good, is the matching game, right? So now, back to my plug-and-play system. Systems as you see here. We have notes, thinking maps, writing. You see how they keep going over and over again, and then a matching. And then I have one day here that we can do something else. Now, what I'm probably going to do is, this is just the very first part. I have a video that I show my students. It actually will take 3 days. So knowing that it takes 3 days, what I'll probably do is I'll probably cut out 3 things and put the video there along with that. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to play the video after each note, or we do everything first of all, then the video at the end. That I still have to figure out. But as you can see, now that I just want you to see how easy it is to fill up 3 weeks worth of lessons if you have the plug-and-play system. And then you can take things out. If you have better lessons you want to put in, you can do that. So for me, I'll probably do that. I'll probably use these 3 days right here. I'll erase that. When we say movie, and there's questions and there's some other activities along the movie. So we'll do that. Movie here and movie here. I know it looks really awful and sloppy, but just kind of follow along the process. And then on this day here, we'll probably do the matching. All right, so we got matching. So now I can backtrack it a little bit. Maybe this one right here, we don't do the writing, but instead so maybe I do this. Maybe I do notes here, and then I do maybe a thinking map here. All right, and then I can just do the rest. But you see how easy it flows. Once you know once you have the plug-and-play system, it's easy to put things in, and you can move things around quite easily. So that is how I would lesson plan an upcoming unit. The third thing you got to do regarding lesson planning and plan for this are your routines. Your routines should be incorporated, should be worked into your lesson planning. They should go hand in hand. The purpose of routines is to stop bad behavior before it even begins. The better routines you have, the less behavior issues you're going to have at the end. All right, I call it taking care of the small stuff. You take care of the small stuff with the routines, there's less chance that it's developing the big stuff. So I'll give you an example. Here is a routine I have in my class. Going back to the message. This is for group work. Students are going to come into the class. The routine is this. And I was very explicit with my students. I'm going to be very explicit with my students that if you are not in your assigned seat by the time the bell rings, you are tardy. You're late. Simple as that. You got to be in your assigned seat. What this routine does, it eliminates, first of all, students coming in late to class. That's first thing. But it also eliminates students just walking around the classroom aimlessly, while they're waiting for the bell. Because if they're doing that, if they're just walking around the classroom, there's more chance of something could come from that. So the purpose of that routine is to get them in the class, sitting down, ready to go. So that's like a routine put in place. Another routine I have in place is for my messengers. So once they come in, they sit down, boom, I do attendance, and then I tell them what we're going to be doing for the day. And then I tell the messengers, here's the routine. Messengers, take the backpacks and put them away. And so that's the thing. Messengers take the backpacks and put them away. That is a routine. So now instead of having 35 kids all get up and put away their backpacks, I have 7 kids designated to take the backpacks and put them in the right spot. So that routine, and once again, eliminates massive amounts of movement and massive amounts of problems. Those are routines you got to put in place. And then I have the same routine at the end of class, when messengers get the backpacks. The bottom line is this. I won't go through all the routines I have, but you got to make sure you want to weave your routines into your lesson planning. By doing that, you're going to have a much more successful lesson, day, and overall classroom. So just kind of keep that in mind. Weave those routines into your lessons. Now that you see how I actually plan out my lessons for a unit, once again, I do this at 3 weeks. Usually a unit's about 3 weeks. And as you see the calendar, I kind of lay it out for those 3 weeks. So that's in place. But the key is this. That's great, but what do I do on a daily basis? So I'm going to take you back a little bit. I'm going to show you what I did when I first started into. So the Andrew Jackson stuff, that's coming up. That's coming up next week, all right? But let me show you what I did for the previous, when I started my group work, what I did, how I got this whole thing started, what my lessons look like on a daily basis. That way you can see exactly how much detail I put into it. The saying goes like this, that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I'm going to take you through the PowerPoints for every day. I think I had like the first 7 days created for my students on what was going to happen that day. So I just want you to see the detail I go into and the thought process behind it for every little part of that class. So let's go to the computer for that. So when the students came in, this is the first day. Once again, it's about 3 weeks ago when I started my group work. I had on the screen the period, and then which group each student was in. In fact, I even started this beforehand because I actually had the students 3 weeks before that start telling me who they wanted to be paired up with. And so the moment the students came in, they first were like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here? All new rows, and rows are gone, round groups." I said, "Look at the screen and go ahead and go sit in that table." And then on each table were the different groups. And so students sat down in the groups. Kind of an idea when I create these PowerPoints, what I think to myself is this: if I could not speak, if I cannot say a word, could I put enough detail on the slide so students know exactly what to do any single moment? And so literally students came in, I could just point to the screen and they should be able to figure out where they're supposed to go. So students walk in, they get to the right groups, and that takes about a minute or so. And then we start the class. And then I start talking to the students. And the first thing I tell the students is this: if your group gets to 25 points, you will not have homework next week. So previously what I had was this. When students were in rows, I had a class incentive. If students got the 50 points as a class, the whole class would not have homework. I kept the same premise, but instead of starting the kids out 6 points a day, I started them out 3 points a day. Instead of making it a class thing, I made it a group thing. Same idea. But what this is an incentive for the group to do well. This holds the group accountable for the behavior of the students in the group. That way, if one student is a problem with the group, I can address the group to deal with that one student. It's amazing how well this actually works. And so I let them know at the very beginning that the group is still going to be held accountable. And I have a whole system for that. And I'll probably show that in another video, how that looks. But that's one thing I do. So some sort of group accountability is what you're looking for. And then I tell them how they're going to lose points. As a group, here's how you're going to lose points. And this is all very familiar to the students. Here's what I can tell you is when it comes to things like keeping the kids accountable as far as their behavior, it's not what you say, it's what you do. And the key is consistency over and over and over again. Because you can tell the kids whatever you want to, but if you're not really holding them to that behavior, it's kind of pointless telling them to begin with. But here's a list of things that students could lose points possibly, all right? But then we go into this right here. If you're not late, if you're not in your assigned seat when the bell rings, you're marked tardy. So that was something a little new. Before I just had if you weren't in the classroom. So this is something new I had to teach the students. And then I go through the different roles, which you've already seen, right? And then I said it's time to make decisions. And this is where, and once again, there's a link down below. I handed them the paper where they actually had to choose what roles they were going to take. Then we had to start practicing. Once again, this is something new I introduced to kids about the messenger. So we had to practice that. And so this kind of gives a big, long detail. But this one I actually tell the kids because there's a lot of information on this one screen. So I actually go through the directions, what they have to do. And don't worry about the breaking down the question. That's something we're doing here at the school. But the key is this. The messengers had to, first of all, know what everybody's Chromebook number is, because they are going to get Chromebooks for the students. And they had to put the backpacks away. And so I kind of went over that as well. And so students went and did that. The messengers in each group went and did that. So that was this slide right here. And then at the very end, once we're done with our activity, messengers put away Chromebooks. And then also, the key is this, that if you messes around, my concern was that the messengers were going to mess around a lot. That was my concern, but luckily it hasn't happened. And then as you see, you'll lose points if so. And so that's kind of like the first day. It's kind of the first day getting kids in the class, kind of showing the expectations. The key is not necessarily what you say, but now the kids know, and based upon how they've been in class all year, they know that I'll hold them to the expectations. And now that I got in place, now we're ready to kind of move on to introducing them to the plug and play lessons. So here we go. Let me show you the screen. This is for day 2. It says this: make sure you're sitting down in your seat. If you're not in your seat when the bell rings, you're marked tardy. Once again, the idea is that hopefully they see it. The idea is one thing, I'll say it as they're walking in, but then also they'll see it on the screen. But now I've said it and they've seen it. I told them yesterday, they know I'm going to hold them accountable for it. And it says, take out a piece of paper, something to write with. When the timer goes off, make sure you're quiet and your group or otherwise your group's going to lose points. I have a time, and this is another thing. For class manager, I would highly recommend this. Have a timer in the room. There's something about a timer that with the fact the timer is going, it makes things a little more urgent versus no timer at all. So I always have a timer going. Then it tells them what to do. It tells them how to set up their paper. All right, so they're going to set up their paper. It tells them what they're going to do. They're going to take notes, and it says be prepared. You're going to share with your group. So this is the activity. This is the lesson, the plug and play lesson, them taking notes. But the key is this, that this is the first time they're doing it. And so I'm introducing this to them. I'm introducing it to them. And so they're going to do it. And the first time I kind of go through the directions a little bit more detail, but by the third time, they have it down. And it tells them, once you look at the slide, it tells them exactly how long they have to work on it. And I also have the timer going. And then for the second day, I want to give my students the big picture. And in fact, if you want to hear more details of my big picture, please refer to the previous video that is in this series right here. I go into detail of why I'm doing group work and what do I want students to get out of it. But I wanted to share that with the kids. And so that's what this slide is about. I share that with the kids regarding what I want them to get out of group work as well as the class in general. And there's another slide that goes along with it as well. We'll kind of skip over those. You can watch the previous video. And then here's the next part. Now this is the plug and play, part of the plug and play system. You got 10 minutes to prepare for the quiz. And then when that's over, the kids will actually take the quiz, right? And then at the very, very end, you got this right here, messages put away, backpacks, and so forth. So that's day 2. Let me show you day 3. And I just want to go in detail so you see my slides, so you just know exactly all the thought goes into it. None of it's just winging it. You really thought, how's that day going to play out? Now, being a teacher, you know how this goes, is that things don't always go as you plan. And so you got to adapt here and there. And that's keep in mind. And a lot of times by 5th period, I might change things because I realized it didn't work for 1st or 2nd. So there's always that constant learning process. But the more detailed you are, the better you are going to be. So let me show you day 3. So you see day 3 comes in. It's pretty much the same as it was on day 2, right? Once again, just trying to make sure students get into the habit. They know exactly what to do. And then I tell them, a reflection based upon previous. Some groups lost points because they either put the wrong table number or wrong period on the test. So the previous test that we took the previous day, someone put the wrong information. So I took points off. Back to that whole 25 points thing. Once again, just holding kids accountable. And then I just go through a little more detail how the grade's going to look in the grade book. Now this stuff right here, a lot of it goes over their head at first because a lot of them don't pay attention. But I give them the information at first, and then as we go along, I keep going back to it as the days go on, right? And then I keep going through more information. I kind of tell them what I hope they get out of the reflecting upon the lessons. And then we start over again. Here we go. Next thing, title your paper. They're going to do a little bit of reading out of the book, right? So you see the same pattern. Now, I won't keep boring you with everything else, but you kind of see the idea. And then, of course, I have this for when it comes time to do the other activity, like the mind map, I have this. When it comes time to do the matching, I have this. And so you want to go as much detail as possible and think to yourself, If I couldn't say a word, could I convey what I need students to do just by pointing at the screen? And if you are able to do that, then in my opinion, things are detailed enough, right? And the other part of it is just make sure you carry through on whatever you say you're going to do.